is the...
Watch your mouth.
Yeah, no kidding. Hang on, here we go.
We're live.
Are we on?
Are we? I don't know.
Okay, I thought you said we're live.
No, I said, are we?
Not yet.
Okay.
Now we are.
Cool.
Hi, you guys. We're hurrying.
Hey, guys. Hang in there just a minute. I think we got two before we're live. We don't want to start too early. We need the same little countdown we have when we do a premiere on YouTube.
I know. I don't know how to do that yet. It's killing me.
Okay, and go on time. Time to start.
We made it. All right, great.
Perfect timing. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for doing all the techie stuff.
Yeah, man. All right. Hi, Jasmine. All righty. So here we are, and this is the Body Language Membership Live Q&A. And so what we're doing, if you're on YouTube, I'm going to say this once, you're watching outside of our membership, and the people in the membership are actually the ones that get to ask the questions. So if you have one, go join the membership at bodylanguagemembership.com, and you can ask all the questions you want and we'll answer them. So today I'm Scott Rouse, and this is Greg Hartley, and that's what we're going to be doing. I think I'm pointing the right way if I'm pointing toward you there.
Yeah, I think so. It's tough to tell. I don't know where we're at. I'm used to the other thing. It doesn't matter where you point. There's just two of us. So thanks for joining us. First of all, thanks for being members of the bodylanguagemembership.com. We have a lot of fun on there. I'm sorry it's been a little bit slow for me in the past few weeks. Lots of things going on. But good to see your comments. Good to see your questions. Great civil discussion about some complex things. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being there and being as civil as you are. And Scott today will take reading questions, so we'll bat this back and forth. But we'll start as quickly as you get the first one, Scott.
Okay, well, here's Eric. Eric, am I loud enough now? Because I was a little bit far away. See if that's loud enough. Eric's on here. He's going to let me know.
Hey, Eric.
So let's see if it is.
We love Eric. Just
yeah, you got to go to Eric's. Tell about Eric's YouTube channel. It's one of our favorites.
Eric's YouTube.
It's how we all got together.
Eric's YouTube is unstructured.com, I think is the actual place you go. But on YouTube, it's Eric Hunley. And Eric is the most underrated channel on YouTube. He's brought more people together and complex chemistry about different things. I mean, we were on with Peter Hyatt, for example. We've been on with Barnes and with Viva. That the people that you meet on his show and the combination of folks, they're icons in the industry that Eric has brought on and mixed them with others to get lots of different insight. Go to Eric's podcast. Go to Eric's YouTube channel because it's hot. We like Eric. We'll be there again soon as a panel.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, 1 second.
Got a question?
All right. Yeah, hang on just a second. Getting right there. All right, first question. Show more. Hang on just a second. TBP has gotten, this is from Lois, TBP has gotten really big with a loyal following who love the content. Are there any plans to do some live training events in the future, please? We've been talking about it. We were talking about doing a thing in London, but with the way things are with COVID and all that, it's probably going to be in America if we end up doing it. Wouldn't you think, Greg?
Yeah, but we have to get Mark out of Canada first. It's difficult right now with all the COVID restrictions and moving.
Oh, yeah.
But guys, we will be the first to let you know, and we will have some workshops and some live training, and you'll get the best of what each of us has to offer. And what I love about the behavior panel is we come at it from different angles and from different locations, different places, different skill sets. So yeah, for sure. And thank you for that question. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah. All righty. And now we have Gene. Any of you ever interacted with someone with dissociate identity order? If so, what is your experience? I have, and Greg, I know you have as well. It's so complicated to get into. We'd be on here for 4 days talking about that. But it's always complicated, and you have to have a different approach as you go toward those things, depending on what they've done and the situation you're dealing with. How's that?
Yeah, I would tell you, go watch some of the famous cases that where people claim they had it, and be careful. What you have to be careful is, if I'm in trouble and there's a way out and I can use it, I will. I'm not saying there's no such thing, but I would also say pay attention to what the person is saying or doing. And there's some famous cases. Go look at Shawcross. I mean, he's a serial killer who eventually, that was his diagnosis. Just go watch it for yourself, and we'll try to sometimes spend some serious time on that. But most of the people you're going to run into are not that in your life.
Okay. Adele asks, Greg, artificial intelligence, AI, can be used to capture and count human microexpressions. Do you know if this is being used in interrogations now, who and where, and how do you foresee this having an impact on interrogations in the future?
Well, let me tell you, there's some really cool tech stuff out there. And, you know, when you're a sharp stick and a sandy beach guy, I always say all I need is ability to write down what I see and learn. Interrogation is a complex thing, and I think as you get further removed from combat, for example, and you're dealing with criminals and that, I think it certainly will start to take a place. There's a guy named Donald Marks, we should bring him on the show, Scott, who has an MRI imaging set of engrams that indicate deception. So eventually electronics will take over all this stuff, and it's a matter of time. Now, how much do we trust those things? Because remember, the engrams that somebody tells you indicate deception are only as good as the person who put them in place. You have to prove all that. And of course, we all know that even polygraphs are difficult today to use in court. So imagine what that will be like. But I will tell you, even 20 years ago, when I was actually on active duty, we were looking at machine interrogation, the ability to interrogate from a distance, because interrogators are hard to train, expensive, take a long time to get skilled up, and then you put them in harm's way. And most interrogators, for that reason, stay way in the rear, and you bring prisoners to them. And then there are a few crazies like me who were forward deployed and actually enjoyed that. So, yeah.
All right. And this is from Mindy. She says, I would love to watch you in your zone, either interrogations or working with clients. This would be so fascinating. Well, as a matter of fact, you're getting ready to be able to do that because Greg, you'll be able to see us do it at the same time. Because we just talked to someone, we got to be careful about how we approach this,
right.
Who you know who they are, and we talked to this person, and we both you'll be able to see my technique and Greg's technique separately. So sometimes you've got to be sort of a hardcore person. The other time you've got to be the person who keeps things light or lightens things up when it gets dark quick, and you can tell that person is going in a direction you don't want them to go. So as a team,
well, you might actually think I'm softer after watching me work than you do today, because people expect me to be loud and obnoxious, and I'm actually not. Yeah. So and
this was not a situation where that was going to happen. If it had, if there had been a misstep, it would have gone that way. Yeah. But in this case, we'll see what happens. Yep. How's that sound?
So you hang in there. It won't be long.
Do you ever feel you're breaching on manipulation when you're reading people's body language? This is from Suki. I understand it in interrogation, but how do you hold back in real life when you want to tell someone, when you can tell someone's lying to you? Can you just accept it and move on?
Yeah, for me, yes, we all can see deception. We all can see weakness. We all can see those things. It's a matter of the person, the human being that uses it, as to whether you use it for your gain or for some other reason. There are times I'll look at someone and say, hey, you're lying to yourself about this because it's going to cause them some problems. I'm a pretty straight shooter. I prefer not to have to deal with deception, and so I am not deceptive myself. It makes it easier. There are times when you need to be socially polite and not say what you think. And all of us have those filters. We're all wired that way. Remember that a good interrogation, I'm not telling the guy what I think. I'm telling him what he needs to hear. So you're right, Suki, it's dangerous that you can become hyper manipulative. And I think what separates people who can sustain in this business from those who fry and burn out and just disintegrate is that ability, the ability not to use it on people on a daily basis.
Yeah, you have to be careful, because if not, then you become a manipulation person. You become a manipulator, and you don't want to be. But after a while, people will be able to tell that, because if you're going to be doing that, then you're going to be telling me you're doing that, or you'll be telling somebody else you've been doing that, and the word will get around. Next thing you know, you're somebody nobody wants to hang around with. So you really have to be careful.
And I will tell you, you should note this, because if you feel really good when you're around someone, and then when they leave, you wonder why you feel so good around them, you're probably being manipulated. That's the thing. All of us have an innate ability to think, what the hell's going on? Why do I feel differently when the person's not here?
Yeah. Are there any other training providers you would recommend for teaching body language skills that is not military training? Our training isn't necessarily military. Right. Not what we're doing here. What you're talking about is the thing we usually do in body language tactics, as well as in the True Crime Workshop, and we talk about it in here, obviously, as you know. So there are tons of great people out there, but there are also ones you got to watch out for that are that you got to keep an eye out on. So if that's what you're into, that's what we have for body language tactics at Body Language Tactics. Or it's go check in your library. You'll see there how you can connect with that.
Yeah. Well, and guys, let me tell you something. Everybody thinks of me as military because that's my brand. I have intentionally kept my military bearing and all that through the years. But I've been in business a lot longer than I've been in the military. I was in the military for 20, and I'm going on 23 now here, or 22. So all this stuff applies everywhere. I do this every day in corporate America. I work with civilians. I don't work with military people. As a matter of fact, I feel like I'm not very military when I run into people who are just retiring or who are just coming out of the military. So I think you got to be careful with branding, but my brand is military. If that is off-putting, sorry about that, but it is what brought me to the dance. It's what I know how to deal with. Hopefully that helps you.
All right. Another one. This is from MJ. Would Elizabeth Holmes' Theranos scam be an interesting one to do for the behavior panel? I know Scott did a video on Elizabeth Holmes' psychopathic stare. Maybe it would be worth looking into more footage of her and her also in light of the ongoing Theranos trial.
Can I take that one? And then you can step in. So, guys, I've already cut that video. Scott's already got the timestamps. She's just boring to watch. It's the reason horrific. I was watching her, and she sounds like a corporate CEO who's been hedging. I mean, that's what it sounds like. Does she have some traits that we'll pick apart? Certainly. But we'll hold on to her for a quieter news cycle, and we'll do her. If you guys think that she's the best thing on the earth, go out there on the behavior panel and say, Theranos. We'll take it. We've already time-stamped her. All that's done.
Don't tell them that. We don't want to do her. Do somebody else.
It's not exciting. It's
oh
just
my God,
it's
so horrible. That's why I picked the psychopathic stare, because she's got that down, and that's obvious, and she's not in trouble at that point. But here, you're right. She just cloaks that and goes. And there's nothing.
Just boring.
Oh, Jesus, horrible. It's horrible. Okay, this is from Mark Barron. Hi, Scott and Greg. Curious, how do you observe and interact with random strangers out in the wild? Well, we're coming from a different perspective. So the first thing that we do before we interact, as soon as we see somebody, we're checking them out, see if they're wearing a weapon, seeing what they're doing. Are they looking around? Do they look bored? Do they look interested? Are they focusing on something? Are they following someone with their eyes? Are they looking somewhere they shouldn't be looking? Are they looking somewhere they shouldn't be looking on that person? That just comes from the observation part of seeing a person for the first time, where there's a crowd or whether you're just in a coffee shop and you're sitting there and somebody walks in. You watch for all those things. Where's the first place they look? Then when you interact with them, my thing has always been sort of humor, to see if I can make them laugh, to see what that kind of gets them off guard a little bit. They're not thinking about anything else, and you can go in. Once you get them laughing, you can go in and talk to them about anything at that point. And anything you say at that point is, I don't know anything about that, if it comes back to you. So it's a great protective little tool. That's the reason I use it a lot, and that's probably why I'm so dang funny. I'm not funny.
Yeah, I'll tell you, humor works. But when you're looking at people and you're trying to figure out where they're going, I use three things: energy, direction, and focus. By energy, I mean high or low. By direction, I mean scattered or aligned in one direction. And then by focus, I mean internal or external. If a person's internally focused and high energy, something's going on in their head. So it gives me kind of a way to look at moods. And then all of this body language stuff goes on top of that mood. I want to know why, I want to know how, and I want to know what's occupying the person. Because you can't walk up to someone who is internally occupied without creating some kind of a rub with them. But if they're externally focused and they're scattered all over the place, then you can probably go up and approach them. My wife says I can talk to anybody, and sometimes it makes her nuts, but it's how you learn more about people.
Okay.
And my dad was the same person. I never met a stranger.
This is from Mindy. I have a very hard time remembering to pay attention to minute body language. Yeah, because I'm too busy listening, absorbing what's being said. Do you have any suggestions, or is it just simply practice? Yeah, it's just practice. You'll get used to it.
But
don't worry.
Take one thing at a time. The best way to learn body language. Remember, I dropped your phone here.
So you take
the way you have to hang in there. I got no sound, but I'll talk to you and then find my sound. I taught soldiers, so it needs to be built. And I know you're goofing around, Scott. I can tell, but yeah, this is not moving. So when you're dealing with soldiers, you need to compound things. The easiest way to teach someone is to take one thing at a time. Go out and learn how to do that. So look for adapters, look for barriers, look for illustrators, look for regulators, and start making a list of them so they become in the front of your mind and they jump off the plate at you. Now I got to find my earphone.
All right, I should have talked about him when I wasn't here, but I won't now. I'll look at him. I'll been down there trying to get something. Look at him. Oh, God. So anyway, let's look for the next question. Elizabeth, have you heard about the case of billionaire Tom Hagen in Norway? His wife is missing, and there's a YouTube video, unfortunately in German and Norwegian, but he is but he really has an interesting face. Can you read him without sound? Is that the guy you were talking about that's everybody's dying around for insurance purposes, Greg?
No, that's a guy in the Carolinas, and we need to do him Murdaugh. The Murdaugh case, if you guys all know it and you're interested, we'll do that one as well. We just got to find a good interview with him. Lots of people are dying around him. He's collecting insurance. I think his housekeeper died. I don't know enough to be dangerous on that one yet. But the Norway thing, we'll look at it and see. It is difficult, I think, to hold people's attention. We might be interested in it and just looking at body language, but when it's not in language, often it's difficult for people, especially considering our audience is global when we do the behavior panel. We've got people from everywhere. It's amazing how many people are on. And thank you for that.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute this because Amber just got home, and as soon as Hattie finds out, she's going to start barking. So I'll mute it as soon as it starts. All right. If you have what you believe to be a narcissist as father-in-law who wants to spend summers in your home with your family, is it possible to keep the environment still healthy for your children?
I'll take that one.
I think that was an answer for you.
Yeah, I think narcissism can be overstated because we all don't necessarily like behavior patterns in people. So I'd be careful. I would be careful diagnosing someone from a distance. You're closer to somebody. But at any point that you get to conflict, if a person who is truly narcissistic feels threatened, they're going to blow up because they aggrandize, self-aggrandize. True narcissism comes from self-loathing. And so when you cause them to feel pain, they're going to lash out at you and make it bigger. So that's the key.
Okay. Gabriella, hello. This is my first time joining live, and I'm so excited. Hello, Gabriella.
Welcome.
And one question I had was, do you have any recommendations on how to deal with at-risk youth or behavioral books I can read? Please let me know. Thank you. You got any?
I don't, unfortunately, but I will go look. I'll go ask someone I know who works with that group of people. Remember that kids, I always say, I taught adults mostly because children learn differently from adults. Have a good friend who works closely with that kind of thing. I'll find out and get something in comments, and maybe we can do a book review, Scott.
Okay. And sorry about that. So if you're into freeze, fight, or flight, my limbic system went on just then. You can see that dog scared me half to death. Rewind it. I'm sure it's hilarious. Okay, this is from Lynette, and she says, would there, in your experience, be any difference in interrogating a man versus a woman? And have you noticed differences, strengths in the role of an interrogator?
Absolutely. I taught interrogation for 20 years, well, for most of my career. For 7 years, I taught advanced interrogation. Then I taught agencies, lettered agencies. I will tell you that the way our brains order information, now I'm going to talk in generalities, so don't get excited when I say women do and men do.
Easy.
But women's attention to detail is much better than men's typically. And I just, in my exposure, especially among military folks and then agency folks, because I've taught almost every agency. And what I found is that women would notice details and take those apart much more rapidly, and sometimes that would cause a bog. You'd go further into the interrogation than I would, for example, because my brain wants to get the big picture. But at the end of the day, there's a process to interrogation, and everybody brings something to it, whether that is the ability to dig deeper, that's the ability to move faster, whatever it is. So you lean on each of those people for their abilities, and I prefer a woman in an interrogation as a partner because, well, Scott was a great interrogation partner recently, but I typically would prefer a woman because she'll see things I don't see. Maybe her brain is working differently from mine, maybe differences in speech cadence and pattern, something that person needs more than I need or than they need me. They might be threatened by me and not threatened by her. So there is no benefit to being male or female. There's just a different approach in how you learn and how you put things together. Also remember, a lot of these people are drawn to the field, so they have the same core personality traits as the guys who are in the course. But yeah, I think I've seen both be very successful. And, military guys, it depends on where you're at in the military as to what you're allowed to do. A lot of women were not allowed in combat in my years. Now I think that's changed some, but things are different. Yeah.
All right, here's another one from Eric Hundley of the Unstructured Podcast. All right, Eric, here's your question.
Our favorite podcast. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is there any law is there a law of diminishing returns in terms of body language reading? Like baseline principles, get 1 to 80% versus getting deeper and deeper has smaller results. You want that one?
Sure. The problem with body language is you can go so nuanced that you're looking at that eye muscle doing something, and it might just be an anomaly for that person. Now, there's some things that you can learn. Like, I mean, if you want to really know how nuanced you can get, go look at What the Face Reveals or What the Face Can Tell Us by Paul Ekman. That's complex. But most of us can't walk around and do that in our head. We need video and we need to look at it. What I think is the most powerful is to look for deviation and baseline shift. You learn more from body language doing that than you can anything else. And people will say, well, you don't know his baseline because you haven't spent enough time with him. In my experience interrogating prisoners, everybody is stressed, including the interrogator when you get face to face. And you can still get a baseline for what is normal stress versus compounding stress. So I think the baseline, that first 80%, is really where the magic is, Eric. And then the nuance, some of those subtle nuances, yeah, they're handy, but I don't think they're as useful in getting to truth as the other pieces.
Okay. This is from Sam. Yeah, this is from Sam. How important is considering the environment when interrogating? If it's too hot or too cold, would it increase, decrease comfort? Can it be used as strategy, or is this unethical? Let me go first on this one because you've got you got 2 hours worth of answer on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all about environment. Because when the person comes in, it's where you sit, it's how they feel. Are they comfortable? Are they uncomfortable? If they're uncomfortable because it's too hot in there when you first get started, it's a little tougher to get a baseline on them because you want them comfortable. Keep in mind, the only thing you have to say is, I want my lawyer. And you got to say, okay. Well, you don't say that. You say, you sure? Because here's what's going to happen. But once they say that, they're gone. So you have to make sure they're comfortable. You want the environment to be pleasant. And you want to be, that's my approach, is I want to be pleasant. So they want to stay and hang around me and stay and be there with me, feel like I'm on their side. And like Greg and I did that. We gave the impression that we were there to help. And that's the tact I take. So it's important that the environment is a good environment. It's too hot, you might be seeing the wrong things. Joe Navarro tells a story where he was talking to a woman and they suspected her of doing something she shouldn't have done. And he's talking to her, and all of a sudden she starts rubbing her hands on her pants. And he's like, here we go. I got me one now.
Adapter, yeah.
Yeah, so here we go. And that's a big one. So he says, so you look uncomfortable. Is something bothering you? Because sometimes it must have been at the point where you can go in and say that because you think you got him right then. And she says, yes. And he's like, what? And she said, I parked outside and I only had 3 quarters and an hour's getting ready to run up. I don't know if I'm going to get a ticket or not. So can I run out and put more quarters in? So she wasn't worried about getting in trouble. She was worried about getting a ticket for that. Yeah. So what are you going to say, Greg?
Yeah, so it depends. When we talk about interrogation, remember there's a police interrogation, there's an intelligence interrogation. Those are different things. So if you go look at much of the stuff that we talk about that Gitmo has been critiqued for, a lot of that stuff is around environmental control, hot, cold, whatever. I worked SEER. In SEER, we taught American military high-risk people what to do if they're captured. Most of our enemies throughout history, and historic interrogation has ranged from being no value whatsoever to being really, really complex interrogation. And a lot of that in there included like things like sleep deprivation, torture, and those kinds of things. So the environment's everything. When you do SEER, you're trying to manipulate the environment so people understand that. If you make people too cold, their cognitive ability kind of starts to fade. If you make them too hot, they get sleepy. So those things matter. And you all know that if you're cold, if you get really cold, you can't think. Your brain, you start to shiver and all those things start to occur. If you make your brain too hot, then you get sleepy because circadian rhythm works off, your body temperature changes and all that kind of thing. So that matters. How comfortable a person is matters. How uncomfortable a person is matters. How much threat there is matters. I've interrogated people literally on the front lines of war. And you can imagine they're very terrified at that point because you're the enemy, the guy who they were just shooting at or you were just shooting at them. They're terrified. And so what kind of data you're getting out of them, how much baseline you can get and all of that is different. But great question. Great question.
Yeah.
We could go on for hours about that one, I'll tell you. But.
Yeah. And here's another one we could go on for hours about. Ken asks, so what's the story on Brian Laundrie? So I'll go, and then Greg, you go. Yours is going to be longer than mine. Yep. So here's what we're dealing with. On the behavior panel, we did a show on him, right? And we had, I think it was 3 or 4 videos. And we did the first 3 or 4, and what we saw there was what we saw. And what we saw, we said what we saw. It wasn't a domestic abuse call. It was just they're pulling this guy over. I didn't know who he was. Didn't know anything was up. In the last video, we go through and say, here's where the problems are. Nobody watched the last video. Nobody watched the last one. So they're all there going, right. Hey, what about, this guy's mean or whatever. Yeah, he's a butthole. But for me, he seemed very controlling. Not at the top. Not as he's going through. He let off some things that gave us some cues or signs that he might be a controlling person. But as he went on, as he's trying to control his body language, he's trying to, as he uses specific words and phrases to talk about Gabby, then you start going, hey, I see what's going on now. And that's what we did. And the average watch time, I think, was 18 minutes. So people are watching going, these guys are getting off of there. But if they watch to the end, it would be different. My take on him is he's not a psychopath at all. He got mad and he killed her. Whether it be, and when I say this, hear me out. If it's an accident, it would be her trying to get in the car as he's trying to back up real quick because he had control issues. So he's trying to control the car. Let's say she was trying to get in. And I think, Greg, you're the one that first brought that up and said, I took your thing then. So that would be the accidental part of it.
I got plenty.
I think he just picked up a pan and brained her with it or something like that or choked her. That's my thing. I don't think he's a good guy. Never thought he was a good guy. But I think they were probably – the guy I had lunch with today, a buddy of mine, Rob Walsh, his goddaughter went to school with them. So I got to talk – he doesn't know a whole lot about him, obviously, because it'd be third person. But apparently they'd been dating for a long time, and I think they were probably in love. But you have those volatile relationships. Even when someone's in love with someone, they'll still sometimes flip out and do something horrible. And I think that's what happened there. I think he flipped out. We're not looking at any long-term psychopathic behavior. He doesn't have the history of that, anything like that. And you can't tell that in that short a time anyway. So, Greg, what were you going to say?
So let me tell you, I'm not going to conjecture how she died. Not that I don't care that she died. Trust me. Anybody who's beaten their girlfriend needs an ass whipping. That's just my approach. Yep. But that's just how I feel about it. But what I will say is this. What I saw in watching that, I only look at body language and I'm looking for things. And there are people who are going to say, well, she was protecting him. Okay, maybe she was. I can't see that. I'll give you a great example of one of the things you have to be careful with. And this is one of those self-perpetuating problems. In an interrogation situation where a guy had his eardrums blown out, I go in and the interrogators and they're trying to find somebody who speaks sign language. And I was like, why the hell do you think that person knows sign language? Because they're deaf. There's no relation. Just because someone has started into an abusive relationship doesn't make them a better liar. So if you ask them a direct question, they're going to answer that question either honestly or dishonestly. And what we're trying to do is look for that body language. That's what we do. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not looking at whether he is X or Y. I will say that he was guarded. He was protected. He was trying to use humor as a deflection. He did some controlling, and we'll talk about all that in our next video. But what I saw, and I've known, and this is where people say, well, you're in the military, you don't know people. Except for all military people are about his age, most of them. And most of them are not warriors who come to the military because they come there for a job. And I've seen many relationships where they escalated. They started off and there was just not a good mix. And I used to say to my guys, all of us are crazy. I'm a little crazy. Scott's crazy. All of us have our own kind of crazy. It's just a matter of don't find somebody who feeds that. And when people get in a situation where one person allows the other person to do something and then they get into escalation, what I saw and what I said in the end is this does not end well. I've known more than one person in that situation, including a couple that ended up dead as a result of it. I didn't see a guy who planned to take this woman that he'd been dating since high school and had a long-range plan for killing her. I saw people get abusive. I also have in my first book, if you own my first book, How to Spot a Liar, or I'll try to put a link to where it's at out there, a thing I call You in Love or Captivity. Remember, I always say, you're not who you think you are, you're who other people think you are. And if all your inputs are gone except for those two people, that van is a very harsh place for the two of them to be. And abuse comes in lots of flavors. It escalates, but it comes in lots of flavors. I'm going to leave it at that because we're going to cover it on this week. But I want you to hear, I don't think he's a good guy, not by any stretch. And I said, this is not going to end well.
Yeah. Let's see. Tom, do we know who Tom Hagens is? Hagens. Apparently he's murdered somebody. Okay.
This is the one from Norway again. I think that's what somebody just brought up. Yeah.
Okay. What is your take on Scientology-based rehab facilities?
I don't know enough to be dangerous.
don't know squat about that. I just know I'm not going to go.
I'll look into it. I just don't know. But yeah.
Do you have any comments direct from anyone that you've covered on TBP or their families?
Let's see. Do we? Oh, well, a couple, but we'll hold that. We'll hold that.
Yeah.
Next time we do this, we promise we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Let's see. Norma asks, did you do the interrogation of the secret person where we all gave opinions who it would be? I'm curious when we'll be able to watch that. I love you guys. Actually, the past month and a half, 2 months for Greg, and the last month for me, these have just been nonstop. And I'm going somewhere with this. And so it's been nonstop. I'm flying around everywhere. Me and Chase were in, where did we go? We were in North Carolina.
You did jury selection. I couldn't. Yeah, that was bad week for me.
Then out in, I've spent a week in L.A. with Dr. Phil, and then now we had to go talk to somebody about something. It was the thing we did. We talked to somebody about something they may have done. Oops. And then now I've got, where I'm going with this is letting you know, although we got that done, now I've got to edit it all. And it's one of those cases where I can't edit it because I'm using my Mac. This was done, we hired a
professional crew. Yep.
Yeah. And boy, were they good. And boy, does it look good. So I'm not going to go in and go, well, I'm going to edit this myself. So I've got to go now. This is going to happen in somewhere else where I'll be editing that. So hopefully it'll be out not this week, but the next week, unless we have to go back to LA for something else. So
yep.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get it done.
But guys, it's been a hectic, as you guys know. I had some horrible month, and so if you missed us and you think we have just been blowing you off, no, it's been a difficult few weeks for all of us. Yeah. Aside from work stuff, on my personal side, my mother passed, and that was a difficult few weeks for her, and I wanted to be at all times right with her. But yeah, all of this stuff, all the complexity that we have collectively. The other thing is, I don't think people know that most of us have jobs. I mean, whether we have a day job or not, it's still a job. All the stuff that we do keeps us moving. We love doing this show. You guys in this place are, for me and Scott, priority. So we want you to know everything that you bring up. And that's why I always say, put an tag me. I'll make sure I come in and answer. Past couple of weeks have been a little tough for me to do that, but I'm back in there now, and I'll answer any questions you have. If there's something you want to know, I love the conversations we get going, and nobody's more important than you guys who are in this on this site. So anything you need, just let me know, and I'll dig in. Okay.
Yeah, and we get questions that aren't, why do you think I'd kill him? So it's not as many. The questions aren't as, don't have graphic answers. So we like that as well. Okay. What's a good one here? I should have been looking during all that, and I couldn't find a good one. Let's see. Geez. Greg, see if you see anything good. I'm having to scroll through this one.
Right, bear with me.
Have you looked at Jeffrey McDonald? Do you know who that is?
Oh, yeah, I love Jeffrey McDonald, guys. I've tried to get live with him. Jeffrey is
the doctor?
Vision Quest killer. Yeah, he's a Green Beret doctor. He's in kidney failure now, so we may never get to him. But we've got a good friend, Sharon, who has contacts with him, and I'm trying to get a time to go and talk to him face-to-face. I really want to know if he did it. I lived on Fort Bragg. His house was there, boarded up until they destroyed it. And he's a case that I'd love to get the chance to talk to. We may do some video of him, but the best, if those of you who are watching, thanks. The best video ever was done by CBS, and I'm trying to think of Mike. You guys all know who he is. The most famous guy. His son is now a broadcaster. He did an interview with him that I cannot get my hands on. It's the best interview ever. I saw it years ago. If we can get our hands on that one, we'd go ahead and do it. But quality of video is everything for what we do.
Yeah. Here's one from Charity, and she says, Scott, tell us about your recent jury selection process, or the process in general. Well, there were two of them, and one of them Chase and I did, and that was, we had a blast together. But and a member of our membership, Robert Barnes, was the attorney there, and what a great guy. And so anyway, it's in a jury, when they call it jury selection, excuse me, actually you're deselecting the jury. You're getting rid of people you don't want in there. So it's and sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it doesn't take long at all. It depends on what the situation is and what kind of a case it is. Is it murder? Is it a tax thing? Is it fraud? What are you dealing with? So it depends on what the stakes are, I guess, so how long it usually takes. But that's what you basically do. You talk with the attorney. He or she will say, I'm going to ask these questions or have these questions asked, and then we'll watch and see how those people react, how the proposed jurors will act when they hear those questions. And then if they act a certain way, then we'll give Robert a cue, or we'll do something that lets him know he needs to ask more from that person. So he'll be standing there, and we'll be in his peripheral. And then as he looks over a little bit, one of us may do this, and so that he knows what that means to ask, as an example. So it's a fascinating process, and sometimes it takes a while, and there's a whole lot to it. But that, in a nutshell, is what it is. And we're all going to be doing it for Robert, but that's the only. Right. It's been so hectic for all of us here with this. Chase and I were the only one to get on that one, and then I did one before that one.
Yeah, we as a team collectively cover, and it just happened that Scott had the availability. Then Scott and I were supposed to do that one, and just timing was atrocious. So Scott and Chase was available, which is great. We look forward to a time when all four of us are together and doing it. Hey, Kate asked a question. What's your motivation for doing what you do? I'm torn between catching bad guys and supporting people struggling with trauma. I am studying psychology. Interestingly, I was dragged into this the first time. I was working in construction. I just wanted a job because I had done what I'd done for the military, and I thought I'll get out and find a job. I was good at what I did, but I ran into a guy who said, you got to write books. And he got me started, and that was 20 years ago almost now. My first book was in 2004. I wrote it, and it came out in 2005. So I would say that people intrigue me, and always have. When I interrogated prisoners and I was trying to get information, it was about that. In corporate America, I teach people how to deal with conflict. I teach people how to negotiate. You name it. I work across all that. I look for deception and due diligence, all those things. So for me, the real driver is what makes people tick. Why do they do this? Why are they doing this thing versus that thing? And Scott, I'll leave you to that. And so sometimes it's bad guys, and I feel nothing better than putting a bad guy away who's doing something to hurt somebody. That's for sure. But Scott, I'm sure you got your own answer.
This sounds so cornball, but it's wanting to help people. Because you can help somebody that's got a real problem who needs to find something, someone knows where it is. You can get them to tell you where that is, or you can make sure somebody isn't out loose among the population doing things they shouldn't be doing, or if you've got a situation where somebody's taking a lot of money from a company that's damaging that company, you can tell them, you can get them to tell you they did it, and get them to hopefully get that money back if they're under the impression that that'll help, and. So that's why I'm into it. I like it because, number one, to be honest, it's selfish. I like it because it's an intellectual thing. It's almost a game you can play, and everybody plays it differently. We're all playing the same game. And boxing someone in to say something they don't want to say, and to take the emotion, work their emotions in a specific way, keep your head in the game, and approaching them so they'll tell you something or leak something. That's what it is mostly for me. I like that because I like watching people react to what I'm saying when they're not sure if I know what they know or not. I don't know how to pull a Dr. Phil and say that, but knowing they did something and then pretending like they didn't, and not sure if you know they did it or not yet. That's
the interesting thing, guys, is people can be really stupid or really smart, and really smart at the same time they're really stupid. People amaze me sometimes with what they're good at. Some people who are not very bright are very good at people. Some people who are very bright are not very good at people. So sometimes in the middle of there is a great place to be. I always say I'm not the smartest guy you'll ever meet. I learned most of what I know from the Army. I just learned how to apply it. And what you'll find is there are people out there who are brilliant but can't talk to people, and you can help them. So I try it with that way too. And, I'm out of the bad guy business. I don't go catch bad guys very often. We do things with court, but it's not like in my other days when we were actively armed and looking for bad guys. A really good one from Stephen. Have you ever observed depositions? For sure. Both of us have done depositions. It's a good way to, actually it's fun. It's actually more interesting than some of the other, but yeah.
Sometimes you get them on video, like there'll be companies where they'll say, we want you to do our whole, whoever it is we're hiring or whatever the problem is. But I got one. Remember, Greg? It was like in 2012. I don't know when it was, not 2012, but I was doing one of that guy who was an embezzler.
Oh, yeah.
And then I sent you the video and said, you got to see this. You'll see some of the best body language in those things, but we can't share them anywhere. I can share them with Greg from a professional standpoint for
to
consultation.
Get an opinion, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But man, you see some of the best in there because it's just normal people who don't think they're going to get caught doing anything being asked by attorneys these hard questions because they don't need to watch what they say and how they say it. They just bang. They just dook, knock them out. And so it's great to watch these people get flustered and watch their reactions to it. You can see lots of them on YouTube and I guess YouTube of famous people being, in their depositions. Yeah. I don't know why.
Go find somebody not famous. It's more interesting because you don't know them and you don't know their character. One of the more interesting things for me about deposition is I always say the organism does what made the organism successful. And by that, I mean the person. People get offended when I call humans organisms. But everything we do compounds and makes us better at what we do. And when somebody goes into deposition, they're certain what they're doing is working. It isn't always, but yeah.
Here's one from Norma. Have you ever analyzed a psychic? There are some on YouTube. I wonder if they really know things. They should be able to see where Gabby's killer is. Well, I'll tell you what. I had one once, and I wouldn't let her go there. She was trying. Well, I can tell. I said, you can't tell anything. You're not telling anything. I just slammed her with it, and I said, then what's my PIN number? If you're a psychic, what's my PIN number? I'm thinking of it right now. If you think of my PIN number, I will give it to you, and I'll sit here and wait for you to get back with all my money, and you can have it all. And then tell me what my phone number was when I was a kid. That's my other one. If they hear dead people, tell me, get my grandmother, get whoever it is to tell me. I've never had that happen, but that would be my question. What was my phone number when I was a kid? My grandmother knows what it was. She called all the time. Those would be mine. So I've only had one. It was a long time ago, and I wouldn't let her have any of it. Not any of that. Greg, have you?
I had a really rough one. I won't go into details, but it was right after a traumatic time in my life, and I was sitting with a card reader who said, I can see everything in your life is great and your family is this way. And I just got up and walked off and just told her she was wrong. It's good enough. But I don't know the psychic thing. It seems like snake oil to me. Look, if it were normal and not supernatural, then we could analyze it. But anything that's claimed to be supernatural, you can't analyze supernatural stuff. That's the whole definition of it. It's why you chase your tail in the argument with people.
All right. Here's a good one from Mindy. When you watch video, what are your methods or the order you watch it? Sound off first, fast forward, just curious. Do you want to go first on that one, Greg?
Sure. It depends for me. I watch the first time because, remember, I'm the guy who finds the video. The first time I watch it, I'm not really looking for anything but is there pronounced body language in this? Because every video we use needs to be good that we can critique. And what I typically do, Jim Pyle, one of my favorite folks who we're going to interview later this week and put him on the show, Jim actually asked me, how do I do macro versus micro? And I said, I kind of do it at the same time. I just look at something and it jumps off the plate at me. But I'll also tell you the way my brain works. I see pictures of things like that. I just see it jump off at me and kind of go there. So I see the idea and then I would dig in. If it's something complex like the Tara Reid case we did for the behavior panel, that one took me 6 or 8 watches before I knew what was going on because it was so complex. But some are very simple. Some jump off the plate, others don't. And then sometimes if I see something that's so wonky and so odd, I'll turn the sound off just to say, okay, now pay attention, turn the sound off and look at this. Mostly it's just me watching and paying attention and looking for what's happening.
Yeah.
Scott.
Yeah. I like to watch it. I like to watch the whole thing first and then see what jumps out and see things that I'll recognize. And like Greg said, you'll recognize tons of stuff. Then watch the clip without any sound on and see what I notice then. I'm not much for a slow down guy. If anything, I'll watch a little faster so I can see something really bump big when they start moving and then go from there. So I don't watch them a whole lot of times, but because I like to because once you start getting too minute, nobody cares about that. So
right. You guys don't want to hear it.
Yeah, we care about it. Shoot, we live for it, but so I watch it with a sound, and then quite often I'll watch it without sound, and then I'll speed up a little bit without sound to see what.
You ought to be here. I'll record sometime when I'm looking through videos on Sunday morning, watching all the murderers. I'll have 3 videos playing at 1.5 to 2 times speed, just paying attention, looking across, looking to see what screams. Sometimes then I'll say that one's worthless and throw it away and go to the other. My wife always laughs at me when she walks in the room and sees me listening to all that stuff.
Okay. Let's see. This is what I watch sometimes because the rules of questioning are different from a courtroom, it seems. Love the Reverend. Oh, she's talking about this. Love Reverend Mad Lawyer deposition. The verbal answers, body language was hilarious to watch. All right, that's from Stephen. Sorry, I thought it was going to be a big question.
Jasmine, what was your question? I don't see it.
I think she bolted.
Okay.
Okay, here's one from Vince. Could you please elaborate on blink rate in regards to what if you ask something stressful and the blink rate goes up right away? Then the blink rate drops as soon as they reply. Does that mean that they're really focusing on delivering the message or the lie? So first it goes up, and during the lie it goes down, not to mention confirmation glance. You want to go, Greg?
Sure. Yep. Guys, when we talk about blink rate, remember blink rate is a natural response. Your body does things even if you don't want it to. And we talk about blink rate, it's a natural part of fight or flight. When fight or flight hits, our eyes want to dry or to wet themselves because they're drying out, because mucous membranes all start to dry as a result of blood going to the muscles and to the lungs to get away from the skin. And when that happens, then the blink, your eyelids are dry, so every time they pass over, they're drying the eye, and so they try to do it more because we're pretty primitive. And that blink rate is usually a sign of stress. And as a person settles into it, that blink rate probably will slow. If a person's trying to lie to you, they want to keep their eyes focused. Go look at Erin Caffey that we all did from Dr. Phil on the behavior panel. I said her blink rate is yesterday. You look at Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos. There's a lot of guys that when they lock eyes with you and they do what we call romancer in the true crime workshop, their blink rate just goes to non-existent, because when you're interested in something, your blink rate drops. And when I'm afraid that you may or may not see what I'm doing and trying to hide, then my blink rate drops and I lock eyes. So you should see it go up if they're stressed, then drop a little, but still have some blink rate as they're looking at you. And their eyes are moving around as they're thinking and talking. Too much eye contact is a bad sign. In American culture, we say it's about 50% we break eye contact as we're thinking. Middle Eastern culture, a lot of eye contact. Asian culture, a lot less. So culture is everything in that. But great question, Vincent.
Yeah. Sabrina asks, do you sometimes analyze your own behavior in a situation? Sometimes I notice my hands. I know if I'm stressed, I relax and try to find different ways to calm down. Yeah, I think going in, especially in interrogation, you got to watch the way you look. You got to pay attention to what you're doing, because it's theater for one. So you have to come on. You have to be showing them a specific. There are different styles of beginning an interrogation. Most of the time, I do the non-confrontational. So mine's usually open, and I'm more like a hey man. I'm not a cop or anything. I'm just here to find out why you did this. So mine is almost like, what's going on. So my eyebrows are usually up, and I'm really open, and really, it looks like I'm being friendly with them because I want them to like me. I want them to get along with me so they don't want to leave, and they feel like I'm the one that's there to help them. So yeah, I pay close attention to that. Although crossed arms don't mean you're turned off or not listening. It could mean you have super interest in them. I never do that because they will think that because popular opinion is crossed arms means specific things. So I make sure I'm look open. So I'm not standing up all, hey man, not for the non-confrontational. I'm kind of relaxed and just talking. So I don't want to look that way. So I throw my ear forward a little bit, get my ear up, and I get my eyebrows up like I'm listening as they talk. I start shaking my head. And then as I'm talking to them, I make sure I get my ear forward just a little bit more, and I shake my head yes as well every now and then. And then instead of using illustrators like this to point things out, I'll use them to draw in. So in a way, it gives their brain the impression I'm listening to them. So they'll feel more comfortable not thinking up something to say. They'll just be listening. They're not as much, they're trying to think of what to say, but they're not as much focused on that because their brain thinks I'm listening to them as I'm talking to them. Greg?
Yep. I think you got all that. You covered that in how we talk to people. Here's a great question. Would you elaborate on the phrase "and then" and what it means to you when you hear it? So, and then is hiding time. I will tell you the best name or the best phrase or term for that I've ever heard was from Joe Navarro and Jack Schaefer. And they came up with the term verbal bridging. And that means, hey, I'm going to jump over something. I always call it hiding time, but theirs is much more sophisticated. In an interrogation, one of the biggest ways to get out of an interrogation is to burn up the interrogator's time, where there's a police officer. Because remember, all you got to do is say, I want an attorney. But when you're in an intelligence interrogation and you can waste their time, then they leave you alone because they got something hotter. And interrogation is a complex sport, as I always say. It's a team sport. And what happens when you get captured in prisoner of war situations is we analyze very rapidly who has value, who doesn't. And we analyze whether you can answer, a priority intelligence requirement or an information requirement or nothing. And if we believe you can't answer anything, we let you go back into the cage and go hang out and have sodas and ice cream and whatever else the other prisoners are doing. But if we think you have value, you get a lot of scrutiny. So one of those ways of getting away from that is to hide information. And a lie of omission, I went to see my wife and then left. Never mind that you got into an altercation or violence or that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a great indicator. It doesn't mean a person's lying. It just gives them the opportunity to hide some information. Hope that helps. Great question.
MJ Lorenz just said, I really enjoyed the episode on Eric Huntley's channel when he invited you guys and Peter Hyatt, who does statement analysis. What about interviewing him in here in the membership or doing an analysis together with him? That could be interesting. We need to interview him. Let's get him in here.
Yeah, we'll bring him in. We'll bring him in. We need to do one of our weeklies. Peter Hyatt's a great guy. We enjoyed his company. There's another really good question here about reading the body language to somebody in a foreign language. Remember, that was my life, Arabic-speaking part of the world. And I would tell you this, while my Arabic was pretty good at one point, I mean, I could read and write and speak fairly well, it was never as good as my English. And so you always are going to rely on an interpreter given an opportunity. But their body language matters too. And I'll tell you that I used to use a good example of a warrant officer I worked with who was native Syrian and show his eye movement and all of those pieces. There's nuance to body language and culture because it matters. And I always say every child is born without, if a child has no disability, capable of doing everything possible. And we start early by cueing them and saying, you shouldn't do that in America. You shouldn't do that, I guess, in UK. And so we're trying to say to people that culture pairs your ability to do things, and it assigns meaning to each of those items. So culture becomes important, how much eye contact you make, whether you touch somebody, which hands you touch someone with, how loudly you speak, all of those pieces. And so you have to take that into account at the same time you're taking into account the body language of the person. However, barriers, adapters, illustrators, regulators, those 5 categories, you can still use. So hopefully it helps.
All right. Stephen asks, we talk about the right way of doing interrogations. Could you do a video showing the different ways interrogations fail? Yeah. I mean, there are, why don't you go ahead, Greg? You got the giggles on that one.
No, I was laughing at something else. But
what were you laughing at?
Yeah, I was laughing at Charity asked, hi, Greg, would you speak Arabic for us now? Kayf halak al-yawm. That's as good as I'll get for today. But I just said, how are you today? Yeah. That's an easy one. Everybody knows. Yeah.
Is that what you said?
And then I've got a book back here called كيف تصبح الجيدان في ساعتين فقط, and that means how to become an expert in anything in 2 hours. So
there are ladies watching this, Greg. Just a heads up.
False cognites, yeah. So
keep that in mind.
And hopefully somebody who speaks Arabic will say my redneck Arabic was at least discernible.
Now, because it would sound like this: Alakswi articulately all the way to the Ishliquity. Flalekwi? That's right. That's the Georgian attorney from there. That was so bad. See, I wish I could edit this. I didn't think. I keep forgetting I can't.
Yeah, it's live.
This out.
It's live.
That was so bad. I'm going to get that out when we've done the replay, if I remember. Let's see.
Yeah, so question back to Stephen. We talk about the right way of doing interrogations. Their video show different ways. Remember, we're talking about more than one kind of interrogation. If we're after a confession, then like Reed, a lot of people use Reed, and you can easily, the right way is to not divulge any guilty knowledge and to confirm guilty knowledge by often sometimes putting in incorrect guilty knowledge so the person comes back. That's for confession. When we're after intelligence information, you're after actionable, hey, where can I put steel on target, or where can I prevent an attack, that kind of thing. You don't want to share any information that you have that might compromise something, and you want to make sure that that person's answering clean, good, hard questions. In intelligence interrogation, there's an approach. I mean, there's the phase. I can walk you through the phases very quickly. I use it to teach business people how to run effective business meetings. And that starts off with establishing control. Hey, sit in that chair right there, put both feet on the floor, hands on your legs, and don't move too suddenly. I don't want the guards to be upset. Number 2, establish ID. Make sure I got the right guy before I start talking. There's application to that when you go into a business meeting. Then number 3 is establish rapport. And then rapport is when I start talking to you, just try to figure out who you are, all that kind of thing. Then I go into an approach phase. The approach phase is me manipulating or your drives to get you to talk. Then I question, get information. Then I terminate and close out that. So there's a cycle to everything. And the reason any human can learn any process is because it breaks into steps. I can't just say, here's how you do it without process steps. It's part of what makes interrogation work and why we can teach thousands of people to do it in a year. And the same thing with read or any other method is going to be process driven. And if you skip process steps, you get skipped results.
All right. What would be this is from Stephen. What would be a good way to train the mind to recognize people dilation? Any good videos? You can watch it on people up close. I don't know if you train your mind to watch it, but you can just start looking for it. You have to get a little close, and it depends on what's going on in the situation. But it's really easy. It's one of the easiest things you can do, you know?
I suggest that you do it on video because you're going to freak people out when you stare into their eyes that hard. So what I would suggest
is... Or you'll make a friend. You'll make a very close friend.
A very close friend. I'd suggest you go turn on a video. A great one is if you got good HD TV and you watch some of these like reality TV things where people are train wrecks living in the house, you get some really good ones there. Because when people get angry, their pupils dilate and they go at it. So either trying to take more information. So go look for reality TV and pay attention and just zoom, you watch it and see what's on there.
Okay, Kate asks, is it normal to illustrate different attitudes with opposite hands? For some people it is. For some people it's because you say this is over here and then this is over here. So that's quite normal, but then you have this, but then you have this. So it can go either way.
On the other hand, right?
Yeah,
see, that's a normal thing. And it depends. Actually. Remember, some cultures you don't use your left hand for anything. That's for hygiene, and you don't use it for anything else. And so it's not typical for them to use both hands. But other cultures where we use our hands freely, people may use their hands to make a point. And there is if you pay attention to people, there's some very famous examples. When they're talking about positive things, they'll use this hand. When they're talking about negative things, they'll use this hand. But you got to get a baseline for that person to understand whether that has significance or not.
Yeah. Okay. Man, a lot of LOLs and things. Let's see.
That's good. Hopefully we're keeping you laughing a little bit.
Let's see. What kind of gum do you chew? It's Trident. Does that count as advertising? Should we call the Trident people?
I don't think they're going to give you any money because you spit their stuff in the trash can.
That's true. That's true. I should have spit it right then, but my timing would have been the comedic genius if I had done that. Aaron asks, hi, Aaron Chase. Now, what are the different types of bias? For example, confirmation bias, institutional bias. What are some others? Greg, that's your bag.
Yeah, so, I rather than try to hit every bias here, what I would say, Aaron, is the approach I tried to teach people is what do you immediately jump to? And whatever you immediately jump to is your bias, and then try to take that apart and see if there's a reason why you went to that location. So there are a ton of them, and you're starting to hit them like confirmation, safety. And what we should do, Scott, is let's put together a class on that rather than spend 20 minutes on it here.
Okay.
Let's put together a class on bias and how to overcome your own bias in each of those. And we all have them, guys, and especially things like safety. One of the reasons this case that we're looking at with Gabby Petito is so horrible is because it's really easy to have a simple answer and say he's a psychopath and he went and killed her, instead of saying, hey, this is a complex thing. We don't even know what happened yet, but relationships are complex and can spin out of control, and any person could do something to any other person. Everybody wants to jump to psychopath for a simple answer, and if everybody who murdered somebody was a psychopath, we'd have a lot fewer murders in the world. Because 1% of the population, according to Hare, is psychopathic, and a lot more than that do murders. So it'd be interesting to see that part, and that's a safety bias, for example. So there's a ton of things that you could look at and just get your head around, why do we do that? Scott, it's worth us doing. And we'll probably bring on somebody who teaches it for a living. I mean, I use it and show you how to overcome it, but having somebody who teaches it, maybe we can get in.
Okay.
Find a good book.
Here's a good one. What is your favorite show for what is your favorite show for body language for entertaining yourself watching that behavior? I know what mine is. You ever watch Ghost Adventures? I watch it's like the Three Stooges locked in a haunted house, and it's these guys who go around. They lock themselves in a house that's supposed to be haunted, and they video everything that happens. And the question you hear most often is, "Did you hear that?" That's all you really hear. They never really get anything. They think they do, but they don't. So that's my favorite, because everyone on there, they'll be talking to them, and you can tell they're the one that have called or said, "Yeah, it was haunted." And as they're talking to them, they say, "Well, tell us exactly what happened." And the person just goes, it was, I saw a ghost come down the stairs. Saw it come down. Yeah, it came down the stairs. So you just watch all these things happen that let you know this person isn't being, I'm under the impression that they're not being honest. So that's the one I really like to watch. That, the news. Greg?
Well, the Bigfoot things for me, the Bigfoot things for me, because there's a whole science to Bigfootery now.
You love Bigfoot. You wish Bigfoot was real. I know you do.
I'd love to have a Bigfoot to guard my property. It would be a great thing,
I know I've talked about it.
Nobody getting near it.
I know I've talked about it on this before, but before we got the behavior panel together, Greg called and he goes, "Hey, man." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I've got an idea. Here's what we should do on YouTube." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "We gather up videos of people talking about how they saw Bigfoot." And everything goes back to Bigfoot for Greg, and how they're talking about Bigfoot. And we'll break down why we know they're not telling the truth about that. And I was like, okay.
Science to it. They've created a whole science to it. That's the part that's interesting to me. And if you've seen Bigfoot, I'm not belittling you. I want to talk to you. Please sign up. Let me
throw that out there. If you've seen Bigfoot, let us know. Because for Greg's sake, God bless him. He wants to talk to somebody that's seen Bigfoot for real. He really does.
Well, guys, I've lived in the woods a lot of my life, and one of my favorite stories is when I was working with a guy from New York City, young kid, like PFC, brand new to the Army, and he came back and told me he saw Bigfoot. And I'm a Southern boy. I went in the woods, and there was a deer standing on his back legs eating acorns, and he had never seen anything like that, so that was Bigfoot to him. And that's always intrigued me, what people see and what it appears to be. And those legends are all around where I live, of course, in the South, but it is what it is. There's a really good one.
If you've seen Bigfoot, give Greg that gift. Yeah, for sure. Here's one from Maria. This is a good one. If you've got a liar in front of you, and you know they're lying, but they become irate if you blatantly call out the lie, how can you keep a friendly rapport going and still get around addressing the lies so you can move forward and getting things done accurately? I know how. You don't tell them you know they're lying. That's how you do it. You just take that information and move on.
Sometimes it's okay to call somebody out on something and not call them a liar. There's ways to do it. Epiphany is a beautiful thing. Remember, Freud discovered that when you get people to epiphany, they absorb the information better. So if you think about psychoanalysis, and when you're talking to somebody, you ask them enough questions, they come to their own realization. Epiphany is powerful. The human brain, it doesn't like change and doesn't like adapting. So if you can ask them enough questions that they're on to the fact that they've stumbled into something and made themselves look stupid, it's less likely to cause confrontation. That's my experience.
Here's a great one from Jenna Bazinski, and she says, "What is your favorite Columbo episode?" You got one, Greg?
Vincent Price. I'm forgetting the name of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's the good one where it's the makeup one. Yeah.
Yep.
And he's I can't imitate him.
Well, I love Vincent Price anyway, so yeah.
I've got his autograph. Did I ever show you that?
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
So I sent off, when I was a kid, I'd always send off for these famous people's autograph, and he came back as a little picture about this big, and his Vincent Price was written on there. I've still got it.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I wonder where that is. I think it's over there. I'll see if I can get it for one of you. I'll take a picture of it and put it in the community. I like any of them with Jack Cassidy, because he was in there a lot. There's one where he was a musician. It was just, the acting was so bad in there, him acting like a magician, because he was walking around the table and he would do this really weird stuff, and then he'd go, ta-da! He'd pull his handkerchief up and there'd be flowers in it, and the people go, "Oh my God, I can't believe there's flowers under that." That's one of my favorites. And then there was one where he was an author and he kills his partner, and that's a good one as well. But anything with all the Jack Cassidy ones, those are my very favorites. But there is one where a guy who used to be on the Wild Wild West, and he was Artemis Pyle or something like that. I think it was Artie, he called him, and he's the one that that killed this man for his paintings and for his money. And that's a good one too. They're all I like them all, but those are some of my favorite ones. I really like the Jack Cassidy ones because he's really good at being a bad guy in there, being a murderer. If you don't know who Jack Cassidy is, well, you won't know who David Cassidy is either, because he was on the Partridge Family. I'm 58, right. And so that was his dad. He was like a famous actor. If you watch some of those, and the one I'm talking about where he killed his partner, you know who directed that one?
Nope.
Steven Spielberg. He used to direct some of those. And you can tell by watching it because of the way the cops act and the way everything's set up. It's great.
So you hit Scott's passion for Columbo with that.
I love Columbo. I love it. I love it.
Melissa asked a great question here. How would you describe the key strengths each of you four bring to the behavior panel? And I think for me, it's pretty easy. I think that Scott has this broad knowledge of people from his, forget the body language for a minute, but broad knowledge of people who are trying to make it, trying to get into the industry, who may be desperate at times. And then on the other hand, people who have power and who may or may not abuse that. I think he brings something clear there. I think Chase brings this academic fervor for going after studies and all of those things, and a pretty hardcore background in dealing with people in stressful situations. Mark brings this grand picture of how life works. The story is everything to Mark. And for me, what he brings to that and his ability to tie how things are working together and sometimes see things that I just looked right past, I think is great. And then for me, it's just, I'm the simplest guy. I try to keep things very simple and make them easy to understand because it's sharp stick, sandy beach again. That's my opinion. Scott, you may have a different one.
Yeah, I think, I like it because we all come from a different angle. Mark's completely different angle than us three. His background isn't in interrogation at all, so he goes off on these big tangents about the Greeks and all this other stuff, and then Chase and I sort of back and forth going in on the research and stuff. And Greg is sort of the alpha because he looks at the big picture and goes, "No, here's the way it is." And he goes, "Never thought about that." So I think we all bring something from a different angle. We all see something different. That's why a lot of times we'll talk about different things, you know. We'll race to see who's going to be getting the big ones in there. But when somebody nails all the big ones, your stuff ends up short a lot of times. So, but, you know, that's why we have to keep going more micro, so we have something to talk about. Hopefully the other ones have missed. So, and a lot of times we'll miss some of that stuff. There's so much going on in these things that even though you may get some really good stuff, somebody else will get this stuff you didn't even pay, or you missed because you're just focusing on these few things here, you know. Well,
and guys, remember, again, I'm going to go back to what I always say. The organism does what made the organism successful. So whatever we're good at picking up on, we're going to pick up on. And whatever we're bad at, we may miss. That's just the nature of what we do. And anytime somebody tells you body language experts are 100% accurate, they don't know what they're talking about. We don't think we're 100% accurate by any stretch.
No.
We have a better chance of picking up on something somebody's doing, but our real skill set is in the questioning and the follow-up and the manipulation through approaches and all of that, and elicitation to get information. The best part of being an interrogator is not the questioning. And you'll often hear me say, I do body language because it brought me to the dance. I care about why more by far than I care about the body language. I'm interested in what's going on in that person's head that made them do that.
Yeah. Here's one from Maria. Scott, what did you think of Gabby Petito's biological father when you're on Dr. Phil? Something about him bothers me. I'm not sure what it is. I think I know what it is. I got to be in the conversations with him. I didn't talk to him, but beforehand, when Dr. Phil was shooting that interview with him, I was on the Zoom call and got to watch all that happen. And we'd go back and forth and I would give him suggestions on what to ask or whatever. Not that he would need them. He never would. But because he's got that down. But that was my role, was to pay attention and watch him. And I think what we're dealing with there is a person who's is fairly strict, and I think he was strict on her and her friends. For example, one time I think Dr. Phil talks about when Brian was at their house, they were at the pool, and the father comes out and he said, "Get out of my house," or "Get out of here." And the guy's like, "What?" And he said, "You didn't come up and say and introduce yourself to me." I can understand that from one point of view, but I would be a little bit less, aggressive about that. But that's one of the things that he talked about that let me know he was fairly strict. And when she says, "I have OCD," I think what she's talking about, it wasn't clinical OCD because he said she was never diagnosed with that. But I think it's her way of being able to control her own space in that van. I think that's one of the reasons she always got so mad at him, because he says, I'm dirty. I brought in sand. I brought in dirt. I have dirty this, dirty that. And her trying to control that space was that's her van. That's hers. And he's in there messing it up, but he's in there with her. He's her guest, in other words. So I think that made her mad. And it would make me mad too if I was that way. But that's what made her what she's calling OCD, because she wants to keep control of that, which is totally understandable. And he wasn't cool with her, because if he was, he wouldn't be. She would have asked him once or twice, think, oh, geez, I got to quit doing that. And he would have been cool with not doing it. He may have loved her, probably did. They probably loved each other. But he wasn't, I don't think he was respecting her because he didn't do the things she asked him, like that, the simple things. Now, having said that, I don't give Amber all my receipts, and she gets after me for that. But I understand where she's coming from. I can understand why she was so dang mad at him, And then I can understand, I guess, why he would be so mad at her if they're in the volatile relationship that has been presented to me anyway, from not just the videos we've seen and the people talking about him.
I think OCD, she simply is using, younger people use that as, hey, I kind of got this thing. A lot of people use psychological terms like psychopath or sociopath or that kind of stuff in a way that has no meaning, because they've read it and it's pop culture and it's that. And I think that's the way she's using OCD. I like my stuff orderly. I would tell you that I spent 20 years in the Army, and I'm the least orderly guy you'll ever meet because I hated every minute of it. I was even in Arlington and did cemetery stuff, and that's the most spit and polished place you'll ever be. Hated it. Hated that part of it. Loved the job. Loved the fact we did what we did. But that level of spit and polish and having to have everything laid out I hate it. Hated it with a passion. Not wired that way. God bless my wife for tolerating me, is what I always say.
Yeah. All right, here's one from Charity. Scott, what did you and Dr. Phil eat for lunch at the Beverly Hills Hotel and the Bungalows Grill? We were in the Polo Lounge, in the Polo Room. And at first, Robin, his wife, got the Greek salad with chicken on it. And I said, well, that sounds great. I want to have that too. And then he ordered the fish tacos. And the way the woman was describing it, I was like, wait a minute, I got to have that now. I don't want the Greek salad with chicken. I'm going to do the fish tacos. So we had fish tacos, and she had Greek salad with chicken on it. And we all had tea, unsweetened. It was pretty good, too. So, all right.
Somebody asked, are we working on a book? Scott and I are working on a book together, oddly enough, and we just got to have a little bit of time to finish it up. I got the structure to it. Everything's together. I've talked to a publisher, and we just need to do a little bit of effort. I think through the holidays, as things slow down a little bit for both of us, we'll try to put a finishing touch on it and hand it to a publisher.
Okay. And if your family and friends avoid you because of your body language abilities, Greg?
I don't think it's my body language abilities. No, it's just, guys, I don't think so, because my wife would tell you, yeah, I try to turn this stuff as much down as I can and not pick on people and take them apart. The good thing is I like people. I like people who aren't jerks and who don't cause me grief and who don't drive slow in the left lane. Other than that, I'm pretty good with people.
Yeah,
that's probably true. But for me, I like people in general, and I always want to know why they think what they do. So family and friends, I try all the time to get closer and spend some time and talk to them. And I try to turn all that off when I'm talking to them. Once you know somebody's patterns, there's no reason for them to be afraid anyway. So, I think that's not the case with me. Much of my family probably doesn't even realize I do this because it's not a big deal to them. They've never seen it.
Yeah. Well, in mine, the only family member I get a problem with is my wife, because one of the things you do in interrogation, when somebody says something, you'll say this, or I do. I say, really? Wow. Tell me more about that. And she knows that. Phrases. So when we're talking to someone and they say something that's weird and everything, all that ding, 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 everything comes on, I go, wow, really? Tell me more about that. Then she always goes, don't, stop it. Don't do that. Don't. And they're like, what are you talking about? So...
Well, see, Dina has to have me turn mine on. When we go places and she doesn't trust somebody, she's like, turn on everything you know and go talk to that guy. For me, it's just, and half the time, if I know somebody's really full of it, then I just try to find a way to get out. One of the things you learn, John Nolan's book, Confidential, one of the things you learn to be really good at is escaping when you're doing a elicitation. Things like, oh, I knocked over a glass of water. What an oaf I am. That gives you a chance to get away. So if somebody's so full of it that I can't stand talking to them, I just do something like that and get away. Yep.
What was the Columbo thing we did this weekend? I nailed him with one of those. Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Hold that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one.
We'll point it out when we do this.
Yeah. What is happening when you have a strong negative feeling for a stranger, but you don't know why? I know why. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. To make a long story short, keep it in a nutshell, because we got to get out of here soon. Your brain is seeing things that you're not aware you're seeing yet. There are certain parts of your brain that gather up the little bitty things you see and the really big things you see. And they throw it back to another little part of your brain called the locus ceruleus. And then once it has all that information, it starts bouncing around saying, where have I seen this before? Why doesn't this work for me? What's wrong with this person? And women will get women's intuition that says, I don't know, something's not right about this person. You don't know what yet, because it hasn't put them all together and gone, I see, because they looked over here when they shouldn't have, and they talked too high here when they shouldn't have, they looked at you too long when they shouldn't have, and they said this when they shouldn't have. And in and of themselves, separately by themselves, it's not that big a deal. But when you start grouping these things together, that locus ceruleus does and says, hey, I got it. You'll be in the shower, you'll be driving around, and you go, I know I don't like that person because of this, this, and this. That's why that gives me that feeling. So that's what's happening when you see it. There's a book called The Gift of Fear that you should check out. Gavin DeBecker, really great book, and explains those things. And
it's right there.
Yeah.
I got it right here by me. Yep.
Very well. Yeah. And I could go into detail and but I would get that book. That explains it very well.
Two really good questions I want to make sure we hit. Would you write a companion book to go with a True Crime Workshop? You're psychic. Yes. That's what we're working on. So great call out. Maria, I know you don't talk about personal political opinions for good reason, but does your line of work help you decide how to vote, or does it turn you off completely? Well, I pretty much think that they're a product. And so I just have to vote based on what I feel, is the right answer and that kind of thing. And what I always say to people is vote on what you feel is the right answer based on whatever they're saying, because politicians are a product and it's just a business. That's the way I look at it.
All right. Let's see. All right. I think that's about it. Plus
last question. I'm going to try to pronounce, is it Jolan? We're grateful y'all are here. Hope you continue to learn from you for years. Did you expect the behavior panel to be where it is now? Absolutely not. We're just astounded that you guys like us. We were geeky guys sitting talking about body language is the way we approached it, and thought, well, maybe somebody will like it. Mark had maybe a little more vision, because Mark threw all of his followers to us day one. Yeah, immediately.
Yeah, that helped a lot. And Jolan is actually the one. I haven't told you about this yet, Greg, because Jolan is the one who said, "Hey, what if we started a book club in the membership, and then we'll talk about books."
I saw that. That's
okay.
Great.
And then I tagged this guy Michael, because when you put Jolan in, his name comes up under it. I was in a hurry. I must have hit his name. So I said, "Thanks, Michael, for all the." And it wasn't him; it was her. So I'm embarrassed about that. But
thank you so much. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea. So they're going to have a book club thing in there and go over and read books and talk about them. And I think they're going to do one of ours. And if they do, we'll go in and do a Skype session with all of them and talk about it with them. Answer questions.
So one last thing, since we're getting ready since we're talking about books, our next approach to book reviews is we plan to bring authors and let the author talk about their book. Hope you like that idea. We're going to start with Kyle. I think it'd be a great one. He can tell you what he's thinking in the process. So when you're reading, you hear his voice. That'll help you some, I think.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. All right, well, y'all, thank you very much for being here with us. And if you want to join Body Language Membership, just go to bodylanguagemembership.com and join us, and we'll be in there. We can talk to us a lot more than we have been this past month because of all that's going on. But there's a whole lot going on in there. Just go there. You'll read about what's happening and what all works in there. And ask anybody that's in there that if you know them, and they'll tell you about it. We have the best time in there. So we really appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.